Golf and Sweetens Cove. He's going to be joining us in just a second here, talking about everything going on down in Tennessee with Sweetens and all the new projects that King Collins has going on, and how they've been affected with the whole COVID situation, and what Rob's been up to since the last time we chatted with him on the 18 Strong podcast. I want to say thanks to our sponsors for this week's episode and every episode here on the 18 Strong podcast. It is Linksole from John Ashworth and Company, our favorite golf brand apparel. You can see me wearing my Wyeth overshirt here, my Linksole cap, and you can go to 18strong.com/Linksole to get your discount code on anything that Linksole has to offer in their cart. And I also want to remind you that we're doing a weekly giveaway here at 18 Strong with Linksole. It's going to be all kinds of different gear, the Boardwalker shorts, could be a hat, could be shirts, anything that Linksole has. And we're doing that with the ratings and reviews on iTunes. So if you go to the 18 Strong podcast on iTunes, leave a rating and review. We pick one review per week, and that person will win their Linksole gear. So once again, thanks to Linksole, our sponsor. All right, I'm going to bring in Rob here. Rob Collins, welcome back to the 18 Strong podcast, man.
Hey, great to be here. Thanks.
So how have you been handling this whole stay-at-home thing? Are you primarily at home all the time? Are you still able to go out and do a little bit of work on the courses, or what's going on?
Yeah, I've been home primarily, probably about 90% of the time. I've been up to Sweetens a few times. The governor of Tennessee has allowed the golf course to remain open. So we have been open out there with very strict procedures in place, no flag sticks, no rakes. Which the no rakes wasn't a real hard policy for us since we didn't have any before. And we have little pool noodles in the bottom of the cup, no interaction between staff and guests. And so I've been out there a few times, and I've actually had one or two visits to potential properties that are within driving distance. But other than that, we've just kind of been hunkered down, and my wife and two girls and I just just one day at a time, and it's sort of like Groundhog Day. I mean, all the days run together. So
I know. I was just thinking I need to look up that movie to show to my kids. And it's probably the most mentioned movie these days on social media and everything. And I haven't seen it in so long. What's the traffic been like still at Sweetens? Is it still pretty solid?
Yeah, we've had pretty good traffic. It's been pretty good. We limit the amount of play that can get on the golf course to keep people spaced out. But we've had a fair number of calls and so forth, and we're actually getting, I'd say more play from the Chattanooga area and so forth than normal. People just, I think, kind of want to, it's become a nice way to get out and enjoy the outdoors. So.
Yeah, definitely. Have you been playing yourself at all?
I've played, actually played two times last week, once for a friend whose birthday it was, and we kind of put a little group together and went out there. And then one other day I played. So 2 times in a week's pretty good for me.
Yeah, no kidding.
So
what's transpired? I forget exactly when we talked last. It was probably close to a year ago or so, maybe. What are all the new changes that you guys have done over the past, let's say, 12 months to Sweetens? And are there any projects that are kind of waiting for all this to pass?
So we built a really cool Himalayas putting green up near the shed, and basically just kind of tied all the pieces together. For people who came there before 2019, there was basically the shed and a blue portalette and this big mud pit, more or less, between the shed and the first tee. And now there's this 20,000 square foot, really fun putting green, and all the pieces are kind of tied together. We've got 2 new back tees for number 1, which give you a little bit of a different angle and added some distance to the hole. And they're adjacent to the putting green. And there's a really cool pavilion too, where once we can get back to normal human activity, it would be a place where people could grill and kind of hang out. And there's a fire pit up there. So it just, these are changes and improvements that just made Sweetens even more fun, I think.
Is there anything kind of in the works there too? I know you guys were maybe looking into the future of maybe even like some some cabin type stuff, or ways for people to come and maybe stay and play, things like that?
Yeah, that's definitely a discussion. There's no concrete plans on that at the moment. Last year was a transition year for us, and we kind of needed to get all that stuff done. And then this year we're gonna, I think, lay low and let those changes be, put out into the public sphere and see how they're received and see how this year goes. But and then maybe move forward with some of that other stuff later on down the line. But at the moment, there's nothing real concrete. So.
I know that you mentioned you had a chance to go kind of look at some other sites, and while this whole thing has been going on, what are some of the other projects that you guys have been working on the past couple of years? I know I've read a couple articles on some different projects, one in Nebraska, one up in New York. What are the ones that are currently kind of taking the most of your time?
Yeah, so 2019 was a really good year for us. We started a new 9-hole project up in New York, and that project was nearly finished before the end of the year last year, but it didn't get all grass, so we were going to come back and grass it this spring. But with the COVID outbreak, there was a moratorium on construction in New York, which actually, this part of New York, it's a little bit more rural, that moratorium has been lifted, and so we're going to actually go back and start back there. My partner Tad King will be going back there this week just to begin to put the final pieces together on the last 10 or 15% of the golf course to get that finished, and hopefully play will be going up there sometime later in the year, maybe this fall. And then we're going full bore at the moment out in Nebraska on Landman Golf Club, which we're really, really excited about. So everything's going well out there.
Very cool. Now the New York course, that's in Accord, New York, which you said is
Accord, New York,
a little
yep.
more of a rural area. And is there a name for the course now? I know that you guys were calling it the Back Nine. Is that the official name, or?
Well, that was kind of a nickname that was given to it. The client actually hasn't named the course yet, so I don't really have any news to break or anything to tell anyone. But hopefully they'll be coming up with a name for it soon. But there's some people that have been joking around about it being the Back Nine, which I think is appropriate. One of the charges from the client was to really go in and kind of give it the full Sweetens Cove effect. So they turned us loose, and we did some kind of quirky, fun, creative stuff out there. So we're excited about it.
So yeah, how would you define the Sweetens Cove effect?
Well, they wanted, some pretty striking visuals, and some eccentric greens. And there's a lot of different ways to play it, a lot of strategy. It's definitely different than what, other people are going to be accustomed to up there, but it's fun and interesting, and, some green complexes and contours that are, some of them are pretty wild, but it's all playable, but it's different and fun. So we're excited about it.
Now in this project, you guys are strictly the design and the build. You won't be like operating it like you do Sweetens Cove, correct?
No, exactly. No, we're not operating this project, and that the fact that I ended up in a position of being one of the owners of Sweetens Cove was totally by happenstance. I mean, that wasn't the plan going in. So I don't know that if I'll ever have that opportunity again. But anyway.
Tell me a little bit about the Landman golf course and the project, how that even developed. I was kind of watching some of the stuff on the Fried Egg, about the background of the course, and just, I mean, the views out there look amazing. The land looks amazing. How did this whole project come about?
Well, we got a phone call out of the blue, actually an email out of the blue from Will Anderson, our client. He and his family are farmers in that area, and they had an interest for a while in building golf on some of the land that they own. And Tad and I went out there in the summer and just hit it off with Will and his dad. And they had this one piece of property that's really just a absolutely stunning piece of land, really big, strong earth movement big contours, wide open. There's one tree on the whole golf course, and we said that was the piece of property that we really wanted to build on. And we actually started there last fall and worked until we couldn't work anymore in the wintertime, and then just picked up at the end of March. So right now it's a lot of bulk earthwork going on, kind of heavy earth moving, and then we'll move into some of the feature shaping coming up here in the next week or two. So
When you go out to a property like that, and you and Tad go out there and you're looking at it for the first time, what are some of the things that you're looking for when you first step on the property? I mean, are you guys already, do you already have a topographical map and kind of have an idea of where you might start laying holes, or do you just kind of go out there fresh and look at it and kind of go from there?
it was very much a fresh approach. We really didn't have any mapping information. There were actually three different sites that Will wanted us to look at, and the one that we ended up choosing to work on was the last one. And the minute we saw it, we just knew it. I mean, it was just this. It's on a bluff overlooking the Missouri River, so it's elevated above the surrounds, and it's these hills. And I mean, there's parts of it where you think you're in Ireland or sand hills part of.
Nope, I'm losing you a little bit here, Rob.
Uh-oh.
The beauty of live TV here. We're back.
That's it. Oh, good. That's weird. My Wi-Fi, my home Wi-Fi, for some reason is not picking up right now. Oh, there it is. Maybe that'll help. So anyway, shall I repeat that?
Yeah. So you were saying it, kind of some spots even remind you of Ireland with the rolling hills.
Yeah, exactly. It was very much almost looks like a sand hills type of site, even though it's not what you see when you think about the sand hills of western Nebraska. It looks like that. It's a more of a glacial till, loamy soil. It drains very well, and but it has that kind of appearance. And then there's a couple holes where these just big towering landforms are up above you, and it almost looks like something you'd see at Valley Bunyan or one of those places that have those 70, 80 foot dunes. It's just a really extraordinary site with a lot of variety and interesting contours to work off of. And it's definitely, what Tad and I consider our big opportunity, our big breakout opportunity on a great site. The one that we've wanted for so long is here, and we're really excited to be working on it.
What's the first big step for you guys? Like, is it, okay, we got to figure out where the first hole goes to then kind of figure out some of the routing, or where do you even start that process?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. We knew that basically we had to figure out where that starting point was going to be. And while the site itself is about 500 acres, there were only a couple logical places where a clubhouse could go. And once we decided on where that was going to be, it wasn't like, you hear about the Sandhills when Bill and Ben were out there, they had like 128 possible different holes. And, a big part of the question was, where do you actually locate what became Ben's porch in the first hole? That wasn't really that complicated for us. So once we decided on that, it was like, okay, we know this is where 1 and 18 are going. And it just so happened that was really interesting and unique ground. And then the first time we went out, we said, okay, this is where we want to do it. And then the second time we came out, they brought us out to actually do a routing and kind of come up with a conceptual routing. And Tad and I went out there and we started walking. We were actually walking and driving around in a little John Deere ATV vehicle. And we just kind of put the holes together, and it really all came into place. It was really weird. I mean, we were going, like, you come off the first green and then we turned right and went down 2, and then you get to this natural site where 2 green would be, and then you look to your left, and then there's this valley that's like the hole I described that might be kind of something you'd see at Valley Bunyan. It's like, well, let's just go down this valley and follow that. And then we went up a hill, and the one hole after another just kind of appeared out in front of us, and we came around number 6, which is a par 5. And then I was thinking to myself, we really got to get a short par 4 in here and a short par 3. And lo and behold, there's this perfect little valley where you could put a 300-yard par 4, and then you come off of that green site and walk up a little rise, and there's another little knoll 110 yards away where you could put a really cool short par 3. And the thing just unfolded like that. It just kind of happened.
What's the dynamic?
That was a really fun, really fun exercise to go through.
I was gonna say, what's the dynamic with you and Tad? And like, obviously, as you're driving through, I mean, you guys probably have different ideas, but it sounds like just everything that I've read and the articles that I've seen on you guys and you guys in interviews, that you seem to work so well together. Almost like you feel, you have different ideas, but they work really, really well and synonymously together. So what does that look like as far as you guys divvying up different ways to come about the project?
Well, I think we do work really well together, and we respect one another's opinion, and there's not, we're not like jumping up, and neither one of us is jumping up and down, having a temper tantrum if we don't get our way, but we hear one another out. And, like for instance, we would look at something and we'd like, wow, that would be a really cool hole going that way. And we would maybe explore it a little bit. And, generally speaking, I mean, we would both come to the conclusion that option A was better than option B. And okay, well, let's go back down. Let's see how option A route goes, and then follow it around. And, it was very harmonious and easy. And we kind of just saw the same things, and we're throwing out ideas, and it just all came together.
Is it a pretty fluid thing where, I would imagine if you're going through, you kind of have some things laid out, and then you're kind of like, well, let's maybe change this. But then if you change one thing, it's almost like you maybe have to reroute or change some other things too. So how much of that process or the initial plan has gotten changed around as you guys are working your way through the project?
That's a very fair point, and the answer is that it does shift. Our lead shaper, Gus Grantham, is a very, very talented guy with great vision, and he contacted us and said, "Hey, what would you guys be up to? Moving this fairway this way and this way, this one that way." And just from an earthwork standpoint, what he was saying made a lot of sense. And so there's places where, like number 6 fairway, for instance, now plays a little bit farther down in a valley than we had originally imagined. But it works, and it works with the earthworks, and it makes sense to shift things. And you have to be able to be nimble and willing to shift and not be too set, on your first impression. I mean, I think that's where how good golf courses get built, is by being nimble and being willing to adjust to certain realities. And so like number 12, number 13 green and fairway have shifted to the left. Things get suggested on site, and you just kind of go by the seat of your pants and do what feels right and what makes sense with the realities of construction. And, some things are kind of, like number 7 is such an obvious golf hole. I mean, that's not going to change. Like where that tee and where that green are, or that's where they're going to be. That's definitely not changing. But like some of these other places where you can shift things around, it makes sense to be willing to adapt.
How much back and forth is there between you guys and Will and his dad, or do they kind of give you free reign, or did they have certain things that they really wanted to bring in to the course?
They have really just trusted us with our vision, and obviously we wanted them to be fully on board with what we were proposing. But from the get-go, they really, really liked our ideas and our concepts, and really liked the routing. I think that was the biggest thing for the Andersons, was making sure that we could build the golf course that we said we could build. So before the project deal was finalized, they wanted to see a proposed routing, which I completely understand. And once they saw that proposed routing and rode around it with us and heard us describing how these golf holes would be built, they they were completely on board, and they knew, basically what they were going to get. And then I produced a plan, and that further, um, described the vision, and they like what they're seeing.
When you put the design together, do you hand draw it? Do you computer generate it? I know, one of your idols, Mike Saran, he used to actually paint them out like in super detail. I was reading.
It's amazing.
How do you go about putting it together, the visual of it?
So I do a like a plan view, like a 2D plan view from up above, and I hand draw that, and then I'll put it in Photoshop to do the title block and the numbers and everything, and the center lines of the fairway. So like everything's hand drawn except for the thing that says Landman Golf Club by King Collins Design, and then the little numbers on each hole are done in Photoshop. And then sometimes I'll also do an accompanying booklet that does like describes the golf holes so that people can get a sense of what it is that we're trying to describe. I wish I had Mike's artistic ability with the perspective renderings. I mean, those are some of the coolest golf drawings I've ever seen, but I just can't. That's next level. I can't do that.
Well, something that I saw you do that I've never seen anybody else do is put a playlist to the different holes, which I thought was awesome on Instagram. You had an actual iTunes playlist that you put to each.
Yeah, that was really fun.
What made you even think about that, and what was kind of the inspiration of it?
That's funny. I don't remember exactly why I thought of that. I was drawing the holes and listening to different songs, and I thought it'd be kind of fun to like each song represents a different hole, and some of it's kind of the music's a little bit of the ebb and flow of the golf course, and I thought, well, that'd be fun to do like a little playlist, and I'm going to start doing that for our other projects too.
I thought
hope I don't run out of songs.
I thought that was awesome. And I was wondering, that was going to be my next question, if you have one yet for Sweetens Cove, and if you're putting together.
So I've actually thought a lot about the one for Sweetens, and I am going to do that. In fact, this year I'm going to be drawing a master plan for Sweetens that we'll have available in the shed, and so forth. And I'm really excited about getting that done. I'm hoping that this quarantine will give me a little more opportunity to get that finished. There's another project that I'm working on over in Tupelo, Mississippi right now, and then once I finish that, I'm going to draw the Sweetens one. And my friend on the Tupelo project actually has a lot of ideas of what we can do there with some songs like Elvis did and stuff like that, and some blues music. And I'm starting to get some ideas for the Sweetens playlist too. I think a lot of it'll be predicated on what the music I was listening to while we were building it too.
Sure.
I kind of remember a lot of the songs that I kept playing over and over while we were doing it, because I always had headphones on when we were working. And so anyway, it'll be kind of fun.
That's pretty awesome. I'm already envisioning kind of a flyover, fried egg style with the music playing in the background. That could be awesome. Tell me about the Tupelo project. Is this the old Colonial Golf Club, or?
So that's actually one up in Jackson, Mississippi. Is right. The old Colonial Country Club, and that's a really neat project, a 12-hole design that we did. That one, we don't have a start date on that yet, but there's a lot of momentum there. And then the one in Tupelo is one that just popped up. It's we're proposing a 9-hole golf course called Bel Air, and we're gonna propose a redesign of that. And we actually were out there before all this stuff got really super serious, and we did some rerouting on that and went through that exercise similar to what we did with Landman, where the client wanted to get a sense of what this place would look like, and we did a rerouting of the holes, and now I've just got to finish putting it on paper to show them. So
gotcha. When you're doing something like the Landman project, what kind of a crew does that take? Like, how many guys? I know you've got the two of you, and then you said you have Gus, your main shaper. But how many other individuals are needed to move the earth and create everything you need to create?
So through the last fall and this spring, we've had 4 guys doing the big bulk earth, and Gus is the leader of that, and he knows how to do it and where to put it. Um, and so we kind of turned him loose on that. Then we have another guy who's a project manager who's helping out with logistics. And then we've got a couple more guys that we just brought out who help install drainage and also help with some of the earth moving. There's shapers coming in. So at one point in early May, we will actually have Gus plus 3 other shapers. So we'll have 4 shapers on site, and then one of them is going to have to leave. And so the way it works a lot of times with shapers, I mean, they're kind of independent contractors, and they might have to go off to another project, and you kind of have to have be willing to be flexible. And, I'll have other guys that we're talking to that will plug in for a month or two and all that. So, but as far as numbers go, I mean, we have some interns coming out too. And then with me and Tad, we'll have a bigger presence this year. I mean, we're going to have probably around 15 guys or something helping out.
Oh, wow. And
so pretty good sized crew.
Yeah, no kidding. What's the time frame as far as when you think, if everything kind of moves along as planned? I know the current situation has things kind of stalled quite a bit, but when was the proposed date when people would actually be able to go out there and swing?
The goal is to have it open late summer of 21. So that's kind of the goal. And, the Andersons have made it clear, though, at the same time that the number one most important thing is quality, and that's more important than a timeline or a schedule. So we're going to push really hard this year to try to have it grassed out so we can do that.
Where exactly is Homer? Like, what's it closest to? And
Homer is in northeast Nebraska, and when you're standing on the first tee at Landman, you can look out and you can see South Dakota. You're standing in Nebraska, and you can also to your east see Iowa. So we're really right on the corner of those 3 states. And like sometimes when we go out to dinner while we're there, you go into Sioux City, South Dakota. So you're just right across the border.
Oh man!
You just go right across the Missouri River there, and you're in South Dakota. So.
And will this be a public course, or is this going to be private?
No, it's going to be public, fully
Oh,
public, and Will is actually going to be building some cabins this year, and we're also talking to them about possibly constructing there's about a 15 or 20 acre parcel that's near where the cabins are going, and we're going to do like a really cool, fun short course there and all that. So it's really going to be a pretty awesome place. We're really excited.
Sounds like a little destination trip, much like Sweetens.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And the thing is there's a lot of golfers up there. People really love it, and they're only an hour and a half from Omaha. For those of you who've been out to Sand Hills and some of those like Ballyneal, those courses are they're private for one, but they're also far more difficult to get to than Landman is. I mean, Landman's only an hour and a half from Omaha, so you fly into Omaha, which I mean you can easily get there from Atlanta or Denver, or, any major airport, and then you're just an hour and a half drive away. So, and then they've got like I think it's like 5 million people within a couple hours, so there's a pretty nice population base that'll service it, and then with the cabins and stuff, they'll be able to get some destination activity as well.
Sounds awesome. With the project in Jackson, what made you decide to go 12 holes?
12 is a number that we've been interested in for a while. The client had enough land to do more than just 9. Colonial's an 18-hole golf course, but we didn't want to try to squeeze 18 holes on this smaller piece of land. I think it's like 100 acres, and then he was going to use some of it for other development. There's not going to be development on the golf course, but it just kind of made sense to try to do something a little bit different where you could have like a 3-hole loop where you go out after work and it takes 20 or 30 minutes. And then there's a 9-hole loop, and there's obviously a 12-hole loop. And I mean, you could play the 3-hole loop twice. It's just a lot of flexibility and kind of leaves it up to the customer and the client it's almost like an a la carte menu. Like what exactly what golf experience do you want? And then the golf course has enough flexibility built into it to be able to service those different needs.
Do you think that's going to be something that we see more of as, we kind of move into I think a different time period of golf? I know that, I live in St. Louis, so I'm not too far from Branson, Missouri, and down there at the top of the rock, Gary Player designed a 13-hole par 3 course, and I played it one of my favorite courses ever. You go out and you walk, and it's beautiful countryside, but doesn't take nearly as long as a full 18 holes.
Yep.
Do you guys plan on building more of those kinds of courses, or is it just kind of dependent on, what projects come up?
Yeah, I mean, I think it will be dependent on, the client's needs and wants and so forth. For a project like Landman, I mean, this needed to be a full 18-hole golf course. But to answer your question, I do feel like unique combination of routings, 6-hole, 12-hole, multiples of 3, where you can do different routing combinations are things that we're going to see a lot more of. I think people are starting to find value in golf that's not definitely expressed in 18 holes, and how do you create enough flexibility and variety in a 9 or 12 or whatever 6-hole loop where you can still maybe get the variety that's similar to what you'd see on 18, but give people different options. So I don't think there's any question that we're definitely going to see more of that.
What are some of your favorite design features to bring into a course that maybe people wouldn't see in most traditional courses or most of the courses? Like when they come out and they see some of the things you put together, it's kind of like, oh yeah, that's a King Collins signature almost.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I'm most fascinated with in architecture is the combination of tightly mown short grass and contour, and how that affects strategy and playability and recovery shots and approach shots, and also how those two things, when done combined together, can create a level of interest that sustains itself. You're not getting the same look over and over and over. And so we really think a lot about, the combination of short grass and contour and blending those together, and, having firm and fast turf where balls sometimes they'll collect down to a hole, or sometimes they'll get shed away. And those are the kind of things that I think really the best golf courses in the world do. And, we try to put our own creative spin on those tried and true ideas and make it interesting and new and fresh.
What's a course that you've played in recent years that has surprised you with how good or how much you enjoyed either the layout of it or the design of it?
Well, let's see. Of course, I'm, the world's biggest sucker for Pinehurst #2. But that wasn't a surprise at all. I did get to play that again last year. One course I played last year that really floored me was LA Country Club. I just absolutely cannot wait to see the U.S. Open there. The place is unbelievable.
Really? It's
so freaking good. I mean, it's a true masterpiece. It's just a magnificent course, and hats off to Gil and his team for restoring it back to the original vision, and the way it plays firm and fast, and it has these really cool greens that are sort of have these organic shapes with these little wing pin placements that'll wrap around a bunker, and you go through the round, and the whole time I was thinking, man, that would be a great place for a pin at a Sunday at a U.S. Open. And the course, the way it's presented too, is really great. It's very low impact in terms of water. They've cut way back on their water usage. It browns out. It plays firm and fast. The Barrancas, work into it, and a lot of native grasses, and it's just a really well presented golf course. And it has this natural feel to it. Nothing's forced, but it's challenging, but at the same time playable. It's really a fantastic course. I knew LA Country Club was going to be really, really good, but after I played there, I felt like that was like one of the 10 best golf courses I've ever played in my life.
Wow.
That is going to be an awesome U.S. Open.
When you go out and play, do you find yourself constantly almost kind of like looking and I don't want to say judging, but kind of like looking at different design things and either like, ooh, that's something that maybe we can bring in, or that maybe that's something I don't really care for, or are you able to just kind of let it go and just go out and play and enjoy the game itself?
Well, I think when you go to, no, I think you're always thinking of, these are, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a place of the caliber of LA Country Club either. There's all sorts of things you can see at places where, oh, that's a neat idea. They have the little hump in front of the green, or that really kind of makes you think. And so there's definitely things that can inspire you. And then other times, things where you think, this is why I don't like X, Y, or Z, or why I would not want a King Collins course to have so and so feature, and you definitely, I think it's hard not to have some of those reactions for sure.
When you're going into a design project, because it seems like Sweetens Cove and Landman were totally different projects. From what I understand, it sounded like you had kind of a blank slate at Sweetens, or no elevations, no real changes in rolling hills, things like that. What are the different challenges that each one posed? One being where, and correct me if I'm wrong, you could kind of do anything you wanted, create and build, and where the other one you really wanted to try to preserve the land and work with the land itself.
Well, Sweetens really had the absolute opposite problem that Landman had, which at Sweetens we did have a blank slate, but we had to build everything up. Number one, to make it drain from the rains and the floods that it gets. It's in a very low-lying area. And so the golf course itself kind of had to be raised up, and then we had to, pump it up a little bit too, to create interesting features that are going to, maintain their interest. So that was all an exercise in building up. Whereas at Landman, some of the landforms are too bold for golf. We couldn't just like clear the grass away and just plant fairways like, they do at some of these, sites in the sandhills and stuff. There's just like too much movement. So we had to tone down some of the strength of those features. And let's say you had maybe a 60 or 70 foot climb up to where a green site was going to be in the natural ground. We have to make that where it's more like a 20 or 30 foot climb. And so that requires a lot of earth moving, but the land is so big and so broad that you can sell those tie-ins back to natural grade. And by the time the golf course is grassed, the goal is to make it look like, you can't tell where the earth was moved and where it wasn't. And that's one of our big goals there, is to make these tie-ins broad enough, even if we are moving a lot of dirt in some places, to make it playable, that it bleeds out in a way that looks very natural. And so that's kind of what we're trying to do right now. And there's like 7 or 8 holes where there's a lot of earth to move, and there's 7 or 8 holes where we'll hardly move anything. And then there's a few where it's kind of in between.
What would you say has been the most challenging project so far to date that you guys have worked on?
Sweetens. It's an absolute miracle that place exists. It was a huge struggle on so many different levels. And then taking it over, that was a daily struggle. There were a lot of days when I didn't know if we were going to be open the next week. and that doesn't even speak to the challenge that we faced in construction. I mean, it was a very, very low budget construction project, and it was a very, very challenging site. You know, our client owned a sand plant. They were a concrete manufacturing company, and we were fortunate to be able to use their materials to sand cap it and be able to put a lot of drainage in. But it's hard to take a 72 acres in a floodplain on very heavy soils and turn it into something like Sweetens. It just was a big, big, big chore.
Now, last time we talked, I think just prior to our conversation, you guys had announced some new investors coming in. A couple of those names we recognize being Peyton Manning and Andy Roddick. What has that allowed you guys to do, and what's it also been like just kind of working with those guys?
Well, you know, the new investment group, which includes Mark Rivers and Skip Bronson and Tom Nolan and Peyton and Andy, you know, that has helped secure Sweetens for generations. And now you know, the concern of the golf course, you know, not existing is that's off my back. And that's just, you know, the biggest relief. And that's what the intent was all along, was to, you know, get it up and going, have it prove itself, and then, you know, hopefully find, you know, a group of investors or an investor who would, you know, see the vision and want to jump on board with us. And it took us a lot longer to do that than we thought, but it turned out to be very much worth the wait. We couldn't have found a better group. And, you know, basically the whole goal of this group is to try to preserve and protect Sweetens Cove for what it is, and not change the vibe, but just make it better. And that's like the things we did last year are, you know, emblematic of that goal. And I couldn't be happier with how that all came together.
Do you have any other projects that are kind of brewing, certain areas of the country that we don't or haven't heard much about yet, at least on today's broadcast or even in major publication yet?
Yeah, we do. I've got a couple potential leads in the Southeast that are like, it's insanely good leads. I mean, like the kind of course you just would like cut a finger off to get to do. I mean, they're just, you know, really, really good opportunities. And then we've got a really cool lead out west. And of course, we've actually got a really interesting lead in Memphis. I hope we're going to be announcing something about that soon. Then there's the courses in Mississippi. And then we've got a few other ones that are kind of percolating out there in the atmosphere beyond what I mentioned. There's kind of a swirl of activity. I mean, if you imagine it like a solar system, you know, a couple of them are closer to the center of the system and are closer to happening than others, but there's some that are kind of drifting around out there that, you know, you hope one day will happen. So we're really, really happy and fortunate to have the leads that we do. And it's all because of Sweetens. I mean, without that, we wouldn't have anything.
Do you try to limit how much you guys are working on? Like, is there a certain amount where you're like, okay, we need to be working on one or two projects at a time. We can kind of have these other leads and prospective things going on, but we have to stay focused on this.
Absolutely. We don't do more than two projects at a time. That's our absolute maximum. It's just, we can't maintain the quality and control over the projects if we do more than two at a time. So, two max is our deal.
Awesome.
So,
very cool, man. What have you been doing to keep up since you're at home 90% of the time these days? What takes the brunt of your day? Designing or? Well,
I've been working a little bit on designing, playing with the girls, taking the dog on a walk. I saw a funny picture the other day that somebody sent out of this dog that was standing on top of a bookcase, and the person was down there, and it's like, I'm not going on the the 20th walk of the day. The dog was refusing,
Right.
and so there's a lot of that. Before this whole thing got really serious, I went and bought a exercise bike because I can't go to the gym I used to go to anymore. So I I try to go down to the basement gym from time to time. A friend of mine actually recommended this really. It's a very simple app, but it's really cool. It's called the Breaking the Chain or Don't Break the Chain or something. I can't remember the exact name of it, but it was a Jerry Seinfeld thing where he would mark off on the calendar every day he made himself write a joke, and he couldn't break that chain. And so the app tells you, did you break the chain? And it, like, one of the hardest things for me is I feel like this whole thing has been like a inner battle, like the good Rob versus the bad Rob, and the bad side of me wants to just, like, I've become a little bit sedentary, and it's hard to get up and move, and the days bleed together. And this chain app helps me to see that, okay, I've gone downstairs and done exercise for 4 or 5 days in a row, or I've been working on this plan for X number of days in a row. And once you start to build those up, it's like you owe it to yourself not to break the chain. And I think that's a useful thing right now, where these days are just, it could be Sunday right now, and it wouldn't feel any different than Tuesday. And that's almost a weird and kind of not really dangerous, but not really healthy place to be, because, at least for me anyway, because the bad Rob has a hard time, getting inertia started. Once I'm focused and started, I can drill down and do things, but it's hard to get moving. So I've been using that app to kind of help keep me motivated, but it's not easy. I mean, so I am working on the Tupelo project and just basically trying to stay active. But a lot of the positive of it too is we're getting to spend a lot of time with the girls and playing in the backyard, and something as simple as throwing the frisbee around that maybe wouldn't have happened before, or little moments that you can really enjoy and be glad that you had. So just trying to be as positive about it as possible.
It's funny that you mentioned the good Rob and bad Rob. We have a coaching group, we have a lot of fitness things that we do here. And so we've got a small coaching group that we're working with some guys. And we were just talking this morning about, the competing commitments, as we call them. Like you want to eat well and exercise, but then also, like, you get to the end of the day and it's like, I'm going to have a couple of beers, or, eat the pizza or whatever. And it's like, you wake up in the morning and you're like, man, why did bad Rob show up last night? And it's like,
Yeah.
you're always kind of fighting yourself. So I totally,
Yeah.
totally understand that.
And I think that the fight is intensified just by being inside, or, stuck to one location the whole time. I mean, and the way the days bleed together. I mean, it's normal time. I mean, you don't really have these, or at least I don't. I mean, but as much. But I think that it's the inner struggle of being out of your normal routine is more intensified. I mean, have you found that? Do you think that's the case?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's a very conscious effort to try to structure these things in. And I'm like you, if I can see myself get on a streak of doing things, and I tend to start to track those things, and then you see that streak and you don't want to break the chain, like you said, it makes a big difference. But if I don't intentionally really put some structure to it, or, at the beginning of the week or even the beginning of the morning, kind of structure out what I want to do, it's really easy for these days to just kind of like slide by, procrastinate what you were going to do. And then at the end of the day, it's like, crap, I was supposed to do X, Y, and Z and never got to it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I'll say that, like, getting the chance to do this is, like, makes my whole day. I mean, this is like, it's fun. It's fun to talk to another person, and helps give you something to look forward to and think about. And, otherwise I probably would have just been like reading the news, or like going, well, I could just start on that plan after lunch. And, it's like, it's easy to just put things off a little bit, I think,
Oh,
nowadays.
for sure. Hey, I've got a question here that came in on Facebook from the Veterans Golf Social Short Course. I think there's some courses out there that are struggling, could benefit from a 6-hole par 3 course and 12-hole just to market to a different crowd.
Definitely. I mean, that's you basically take the land. Let's say that the course that they're referring to is 150 acres, and you have to treat things as a blank slate. And let's say you set aside 40 or 50 acres for this 6-hole course, and that means you've got 110 acres to do something really cool and really expressive over 12 holes, which 110 acres for 12 holes, for instance, is plenty of room, and you can get kind of big and bold and have big wide fairways, and that's kind of like what we were doing at Jackson. Rather than getting stuck in these smaller corridors on the old Colonial Country Club, by going to 12, we freed ourselves up to get bigger features, a bigger golf course in those holes. And so, I think that's those type of multi-use opportunities in golf are there for sure.
Yeah, I think it'd be cool to see some of these, what we would call like cookie cutter courses almost, kind of mix it up and see what that would do, what kind of a different audience that might bring. Or
100%. And that's where a lot of golf development, I think, is going to go in the next 20 years, is taking a underutilized, perhaps bland layout that is in a population center, in reconfiguring it and turning it into, maybe it's 9 holes, and then on the other 9 holes you do like a really cool development with bars and restaurants or something. It could be something like that. That might be the play, where it becomes a very social space. Or if it's just all about the golf, it could be something like they described, where you do 12 holes and 6 holes, or maybe you have a short course and a kind of like a Top Golf type of thing, but it's actual real golf. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can do creative stuff and service the public and give them what they need.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next 10 years, 20 years. It seems like we had such a long run of, building golf courses around neighborhoods and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And now it seems like,
Yep.
There's a lot more of these kind of destination style places like you guys are really building and doing such a great job with. And I think a lot of people didn't think that model would seem to work, but, Bandon Dunes has proved the fact that it does. And, I mean, you guys have a 9-hole course that people travel from all over the place to go to. It's just kind of crazy to see how this stuff works.
It's insane. I know, that's the craziest thing about Sweetens, is that it became a destination without the benefit of indoor plumbing, 18 holes, lodging, or food and beverage. And that's one of the biggest mold breaking things about that place, is that there were a lot of conventional wisdom that said, oh, you have to have X, Y, and Z to be a destination, and Sweetens has kind of debunked some of those things. I mean, nobody in their right mind would ever go, oh, I'm going to build a 9-hole golf course and not have any service whatsoever, and like that be your goal. So you would never set out to make that the goal. It just kind of happened, So something that off the beaten path, has to happen in a very unique way, and that's kind of why it worked. But there's more than one way to skin a cat, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's funny. It's almost like the things that people would have told you, like the reasons why it won't work, are almost the exact reasons why it did work. Like why people liked it so much, right?
That's an interesting way to phrase it. That's really funny. Yeah.
All right, my man. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. It's always great to catch up.
Yeah.
And hopefully,
well, I appreciate you having me on. I really enjoyed it, and I thank you for having me. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. I know we've been chatting back and forth about it, but when the weather warms up, I am coming down to play Sweetens Cove. I'm coming down to get my experience.
And I want to play with you. That'll be a lot of fun.
That would be a ton of fun. Well, Rob, appreciate you coming on, and good luck with all the projects. Can't wait to see more. And I really want to see those playlists.
Appreciate it. Yeah, all right. We'll get on it.
Sounds good, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
You too. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us here on the 18 Strong Live podcast with Rob Collins from Sweetens Cove. If you want to know more about Rob or Sweetens, you can find more information once this goes live on the iTunes podcast, 18 Strong iTunes podcast. We will have the show notes up. You can go to 18strong.com and search for Rob Collins, and we will have all the information, anything linked up there in the show notes. I do want to say thanks again to our sponsors for this week's episode, LinkSoul. Go to 18strong.com/LinkSoul to get your 20% off coupon code for anything that they have in the shopping cart. And I want to remind you that we are also doing a weekly giveaway of LinkSoul gear. All you have to do to enter that giveaway is go to 18 Strong in iTunes and leave a rating and review for the podcast. We pick a winner every single week for different gear. It could be the hats that they have, could be the overshirts that they have, could be the Boardwalker shorts, which are some of my favorites, and that's what we're going to be giving away this week is the Boardwalker shorts. So thank you for joining us again on the podcast. Don't forget to go over and join our Facebook group, the 18 Strong Movement on Facebook, where we are interacting with all of the guests on the show, lots of other fitness professionals in the golf world, and lots of the listeners and audience, all working to make golf strong. And if you need any help with any of your training programs, any of your golf fitness needs, just go over to 18strong.com. We have all of our training programs on there. You can find out more about us. You can find out more about all the podcast episodes and find it all there. All right. Thanks again. Train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.